Welcome back to NRM 638, Python Scripting for ArcGIS Applications, Spring Semester 2015. This is an e-learning class at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. In this session, we're going to get you started with Python add-ins. And Python add-ins are documented in ArcGIS Help, and they were introduced in version 10.1. So if you go to ArcGIS Help, go to Guidebooks, and then the last guidebook is ArcGIS Desktop Python Add-ins. And then we'll start with what is a Python add-in. Okay, so from the guidebook it says add-ins at 10 were authored using .NET or Java, and at 10.1 Python was added to the list of languages for authoring desktop add-ins. And what we need to do is download a wizard, and the wizard is the Python add-in wizard. So if you click here, that will allow you to download the Python wizard. So we'll click there, and then you need to download this Python add-in wizard. So if you click on this, you'll be able to download it. So download that wizard and unzip it. It'll be addinassistant.zip, and we'll unzip it in some folder. So I downloaded it to this folder, Week 13 Python add-ins, and then I'll extract it. So that creates a folder, Add-in Assistant, and in that folder there's a bin direct subfolder, and what we really want is this addinassistant.exe, and we're going to use that a lot. So what we'll do is create a shortcut and put that shortcut on our desktop. So I right mouse click and create a shortcut, and then I'll drag that shortcut to my desktop. So now we can run our add-in assistant from our desktop. So this is how we will create a Python add-in. We specify a folder. So I'll make a new folder and I'll put it in C, and I'll call this test add-in. Okay, so now we're going to add it knows our working folder is C test add-in. We know our product that we're going to work with that is going to contain the add-in will be ArcMap. And then we'll give it our project property name. Our version by default is 0.1. Our company, so whatever company you have, and then a description, and then an authorship. So you could give your author information and your email. Okay, so then we would go to the Add-in Contents tab, and what we're going to do is add a toolbar. So right mouse click on Toolbars and make a new toolbar. And we could name that toolbar anything we want. So let's name this Test Toolbar. And then we'll give it toolbar number 1 is we'll call it. And it will initially appear in ArcMap whenever we fire up ArcMap. And then we'll add a button. So right mouse click and make a new button on our toolbar. And we'll call this Test Button. And then the class name, we'll call it Button 1. And then our ID variable name we'll call button 1. Okay, so a tooltip would be when you hover over that button, a tooltip appears. So we could just give it test tooltip. And then the message would be this tool does the following. So basically a description of what that tool does. And then we could have a help heading, and then we could have help content. And then we could assign an image for that tool. So if we click on image for control, we would go to a location that has images. So for example, I could go to C, Program Files, x86, and then ArcGIS, Desktop 10.2, bin, and then icons. And I could grab a graphic for my button. So whatever I want for my button. So I'll just grab something for my button. So let's do a generic green star, 16 rows by 16 columns. Okay, so then we'll save our work, and then we can open the folder that contains the Python script associated with our toolbar and our button. So then we would just click on Open Folder, and every time we have an add-in, we'll have a install folder, and that's where your Python script is going to be located. You'll have an images folder, and that image folder will have all the graphics associated with your buttons, tools, etc. And then you'll have an XML that configures your Python add-in. So let's look at this XML in WordPad. We won't edit the XML usually, but we could look at it just to see what it contains. So open it in WordPad. So here's what's inside this config.xml. So basically we've got our add-in, we've got our project property name, we've got our first class is button 1, and then we have the properties of button 1. So for example, the tool tip, the message, etc. And then we have just information about what our add-in contains. So that we won't edit, set by our add-in wizard, but what we will edit is the Python script associated with our add-in. So that's always in the install folder. So we'll edit that. Okay, so here we have a class button 1, and we have an event. So on click, what do we want our button to do? So let's put on click will display a message. So if we go to Python add-ins and then dot message box, and then we could put our message click event and then the title for our message box. We'll just put title for message box. And then the type of message box will be type 0. And then we'll save our Python script and we'll check for any syntax errors. So there are no syntax errors. Okay, so you can read about our message box in this module Python add-ins if you go to ArcGIS help. And if you go to the guidebooks, ArcGIS desktop Python add-ins, and then down here the Python add-ins module. So we're using Python add-ins.messageBox, and it's message, title, and message box type. So it shows a message box returning a string value representing the button pressed. The message is a string that will display the message. Title is a string that will be the title of our box. And then their message box type is the type of the message box. And that will be 0 for OK. So if we scroll down, here are our type of message boxes. So if we want a message box that has a message and then just OK, we would say type 0. All the way down to if we want a message box that says, here's our message, and then OK, cancel, try again, or continue, that would be message box number 6. So we have these 6 types of message boxes. So for example, message box 3 would have a yes, no, or cancel. And message box 2 would be abort, retry, or ignore. So we're just going to say OK for our message box. Okay, so we've edited our Python script. So now what we're ready to do is create our add-in. So what we'll do is go back to our test add-in folder and then double click on make add-in. And what that will do is make this .esri add-in. And that's what you double click on to actually install the add-in for ArcMap. So we double click on it, and then we have the install utility. So we have our project property name, our version, our author, our add-in property. You just click on install add-in. So then it's been successfully installed for ArcMap. And then OK. And what that install actually does is it installs our add-in in a well-known folder that ArcMap looks at every time you start ArcMap. And that well-known folder is located in your Documents, ArcGIS, and then Add-ins, and then Desktop 2. So there's our add-in. It was simply copied to this location. So every time ArcGIS starts up, it looks in this folder and says, are there any add-ins in this folder? And if there are, then it knows about the add-ins in that folder. So we'll fire up ArcMap. So here is our first add-in. So there's our button, and we click on that button, and we get a message. A click event occurred. So every time we click on this button, we get a message box, and it'll be message box 0, where it returns OK. So that's basically our first add-in. So let's modify this add-in. So we'll exit and go back to the location where we created our add-in, and then we'll edit our Python script. So now let's change our message box, and let's change our message box to a message box type 1 where we'll have OK or cancel. So we go back to our install folder in wherever we have our test add-in, and we'll edit that Python script. And then we'll change our message box to message box 1, and we'll say message equals, and then if message is equal to OK, print do something. And then otherwise, if message is equal to cancel, print user wants to cancel. And then we'll check this. So save it and check our module. And then what we have to do is rebuild our add-in. So we've saved our Python script. If you go back to test add-in, what we could do is remove our original add-in. We don't have to do that, but I'm just doing that to show a little more clearly. Every time you double click on make add-in, it redoes the add-in, makes the add-in with the most current version of your Python script. So make our add-in, and then we'll install it. So install our add-in, and then OK. So now we can fire up ArcMap. And if you remember in our Python script, we had some print statements. Those print statements will go to our Python window. So we click on our button, and then we have a choice. So either OK or cancel. So let's click on cancel. So the user wants to cancel. So then in our Python script, we could basically do whatever we want, whatever script actions associated with cancel. And if we say OK, then in our script, we could basically execute some Python code that the user says, OK, do something. Okay, so that's enough for our first session on Introduction to Add-ins. Go to the Blackboard website. The next video session will be on interacting among buttons. So we could disable some buttons and keep them disabled until the user presses on one button, which allows us to enable a second button.